Okay, time to start a new army. I started my career with Tyranids, then moved on to Deathcore of Krieg, and then recently trying Blood Angels. But after these very uniform factions, I fancy having some fun, doing whatever I want, and not being bound to a ubiquitous colour scheme. And I reckon Chaos will be the ideal outlet for this.
Doesn't obey your rules. It goes where it wants. Like me, babe.
Before I commit to a deity, one thing that no force of the ruinous powers should be without, some Chaos Spawn. Now, what have Games Workshop got for us?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Well, no wonder an Auspex Tactics poll put these as the 8th worst Games Workshop models. These are in fact pretty dire. Fortunately, we no longer live in a world where I have to field this piece of crap and don't have to kit bash something from scratch. I can, in fact, look elsewhere. A brief rummage around the interwebs, and this one by Duncan Shadow just leapt out at me. Hell yeah! This just connects to my childhood delight and revulsion in seeing the original thing. The melting, distorting, stretching skin, the growths, the blending of organisms and addition of appendages from other life forms. These feel much more spot on for a champion of chaos that has fallen from favour, has been cast down and racked by mutation that has shattered their mind in the process. Giant, mindless, shambling parodies of their former selves. And each one definitely evokes a little of several of the Thing bioforms. The body, recovered from the Norwegian camp, the distended faces, melting, stretching, blending, and the big final form that erupts from below the floor, a towering grotesque, several species blended together into one fell abomination. And from the prequel, the big body maw thing, its entire torso now devoted to a ravenous, fang-choked mouth. Tentacles waving, ready to engulf and drag victims in to be consumed. Okay, download the models, drop them in Jitterbox, export them to a thumb drive, and off to my frozen mighty 8K we go. Run a cycle and out they come. Take off the build plate, put on some gloves, and dig in with the scraper to get them off and onto a paper towel. Then, just as a precaution, take the little plastic scraper and just gently move it around the vat, making sure there were no failed bits. For this one, all is good. Everything came out.
Perfect.
Right, into a pickle strainer full of alcohol they go, and bob them up and down for a bit to get rid of all the Urukai-esque goop that covers newly printed models. Dropping them into some warm water to loosen them up, this helps pop the supports free and lessens the risk of snapping bits off the models. This is especially handy for thin or delicate features like chains or blades, but these are chunky fellows and so they are pretty sturdy. Okay, there's only a couple of limbs that need to be added, a dab of superglue, and they are assembled. I printed some ocean rig bases from the dredge guard, and then everything goes off outside and into a box for a blast of chaos black primer all over. Now, I pondered getting colourful, but I'm inspired by the Thing currently, and I want these to be very fleshy. So let's start off with a layer of Cadian flesh tone for a base layer. Paint it all over the 3 Chaos Spawn, getting into all those folds and weird appendages. While I let this dry, turning to the bases, a quick base of Abaddon Black, and then once dry breaking out the Iron Hand Steel base so I can give a light dry brush across the whole disc to give the areas of metal a nice dark, battered and decrepit, very derelict look. The rock platforms on a couple of the bases though, I'm giving those a delicate dry brush of Hoth Blue Dry, catching the edges and working inwards. Now, I've played with water texture acrylic before when I made some blast craters and wanted them to look flooded, so let's apply this to the watery bases of the ring. I'm using AK Still Water, a squirt of it into the bottom of a spare base, then add a generous amount of Tesseract Glow Technical Paint, getting it almost opaque, and then with a brush, start painting it around the bases, laying down the dark depths of the fetid polluted waters. So while that dries, breaking out some Seraphim Sepia Shade and paint it all over the models Null Oil style. This settles into the features nicely and really brings out all the weird mutation detail, the faces, the hands, the wrinkles and the folds. Now, some Ungor flesh layer, a little dab on the brush, wipe it off on the back of my hand, and then dry brushing to highlight the raised edges of the spawn's anatomy. Then, white scar, same thing but done more delicately and applied to just bring out some muscles and facial features and other distinct aspects. and more heavily applied to the various horns and other protuberances. Right, some of them have some rags left on them, so I have a vague idea that will work with the rig motif that predominates throughout the dredge guard. Taking inspiration from the series of the rig, the red oil worker outfits, I think these shattered tatters are the remnants of these industrial uniforms. Mephiston red delicately painted onto the rags and the leftovers, and then Caribird crimson shade washed over the torn fabric to make them look all oily and grimy, as well as bringing up the details. Right, back to the white scar, and this time painted onto the big round eyeballs and the inside of the mouths. This gets everything ready for an application of nihilic oxide technical, so the white scar really gives it that bioluminescent glow as it settles into the depths, making the big body mouth really pop and the bovine face and tongue really stand out, and also the various eyes, making them radiate the power of the wolf that distorted and wrecked these physical forms. Actually, to accentuate the eyes, a little dab of Nuln oil washed around to darken the socket and make the eyes even more prominent. Now, for the coral and other sea plants. Green Stuff World fluorescent paints. I bought a box and painting directly onto the growths, it really creates some nice pools of colour. Add more still water to the mix, a little more tesseract and another layer of fluid. Let it dry, water it down even more, and continue to dilute, add, let it dry, and fill up the bases so that there's a nice clear top surface layer that fades through ever increasing opacity until the solid bottom. If you get air bubbles, steer them around with the tip of the brush and mush them to pop them. Make sure to let it totally dry and go slow. If you make the layers too thick, they may crack or split. Okay, glue them to the bases, and here we have 3 Chaos Spawn. Those who devote themselves to the ruinous powers are embarking on a most hazardous path, fraught with the most absolute peril, jeopardizing body, mind, soul and sanity in their craving for power and their recognition by their chosen deity to gain the ultimate prize, immortality in the form of elevation to demonhood. Exemplary acts of devotion can result in mighty gifts from their patron, the deeds of the champion occasionally drawing the fickle eye of the Chaos God to whom they have pledged eternal allegiance. However, just as they can be granted rewards in the form of demonic weapons, chaos armor, physical enhancements, familiars and companions, and other rewards specific to their deity, they can also accrue mutations. The scales of their fate balance these chaos attributes against their chaos gifts, until such time as the eye of their god falls upon them in judgment. Those lacking in either continue their path. Those with a generous number of rewards and who are less touched by mutation are deemed to have fulfilled their devotion. They are flooded with power and shed all mortal flesh as they are reborn as an eternal demon prince to continue their existence forevermore, their loyalty and commitment reborn to new and fanatic levels. But those whose fealty has been weak, or simply have had the misfortune to accrue more in the way of mutation than they have gathered in gifts, these are deemed to have fouled their deity. They are racked with even more warping of their flesh, contorted to new and bizarre horrific levels of malformation, being rendered barely recognisable from their original mortal form. For some, this burden is too much for their physical form to bear, and they are slain by their degeneration. Those who survive have their minds utterly shattered by this event, left gibbering wrecks devoid of any semblance of intellect. As Chaos Spawn, they now serve as a warning to others what can happen to those who fail to show proper piety to the ruinous powers. Some are imprisoned, some are driven away, a danger to their former retinue, but out of a hint of respect to their former champion, or maybe from bitterness to see the being they once followed laid so low, some are kept as a form of pet, driven forward and into battle, their numerous warp mutilated appendages and maws flailing, gnawing, pummeling and spewing onto the foe.